Honorable Shri Prabhu Chawla ji, hi, sorry, Shampa Kamath ji, Ashwin Sanghi ji, respected friends. You know, when I was talking with, sorry, actually I've just recovered from dengue, so I'm not on form, but I'll try my best. Can you hear me? When I was discussing with Shampaji what we should speak on, she said, why don't we speak on the emerging trends in our country and link them with media, with new media, with emergent media, with new narratives, and link media with society and culture. No, that's fine. When I was looking at these trends, the one thing that I noticed and that I've been speaking on for a long time is this emergent trend, this fault line that we see on citizen initiatives, on how today nobody is really looking at the system as the only agent of change and hope, and how people are really taking things into their own hands. Last year, a 12-year-old boy called Ravi Teja in Hyderabad noticed somebody almost dying over a pothole. Almost 6,000 people die over potholes every year in our country. And what he did was that he, rather than going to the Hyderabad Municipal Corporation, he started getting friends together, and they got broken bricks and gravel and rocks, and they started mending one pothole after the other. Telangana was very impressed, but what is most interesting is that Bangalore, which is a much, which is a very progressive and vibrant city, Bangalore started something called the BBMP Pothole Reporter. And they got this 12, 13-year-old boy to come and inaugurate it. And the BBMP Pothole Reporter is something that you must see. It's very interesting. What it is that if you upload the picture of one single pothole to this app, if it's not fixed within 24 hours, then you get 100 rupees a day for every day that it's not fixed. And it's taken out of the salary of the engineer in question. In Mumbai, all of us know the example of Feroze Shah and his neighbor Harbans Mathur, who one day looked at their beach in Versova and said, you know, even an animal is not going to sit on this beach, forget people. And instead of going to, the BMC or whatever, they just put on these rubber gloves and they started picking up garbage from the beach. I was in Mumbai giving a lecture a few months ago, and I actually went, it was a Saturday, and I went to Versova Beach, and there were about 500 people. None of them big people, just somebody who's a thelawala, somebody is a student, somebody is a young lawyer, and they got together and they were just cleaning this beach bit by bit by bit, and they have removed 5,000 tons of trash on this 4-kilometer long coastline, and today it's the cleanest beach there is. When we look at these, the relationship between media acting not just as a catalyst but amplifying these citizen initiatives, we don't have to look just in India. Just look at what's happening all over the world. And I want young people to listen to what I'm saying, because I hope that you are going to be catalysts yourself. Let's look at the Me Too movement. So when Tarana Burke came and, posted her experience with sexual abuse, and she just put a hashtag called Me Too. And then after that, Alyssa Milano, the actress, tagged it, and then it went, to quote a much used word, viral. Can you please keep the noise down next door, please? It's really disturbing. Could you ask them to keep quiet, please? I'd be very grateful if you could keep quiet. Thank you. And you know, the thing about Me Too is that it didn't remain a movement about sexual abuse. It remained and expanded to equal opportunities for pay of all kinds of, it opened up all kinds of, gender gap discrimination stories. Next to Delhi, there's a district called Mewat. Could you please keep quiet? I've come a long way and it's really, if you could ask them to please keep quiet, otherwise. Thank you. We come a long way to these things, it's not like we get paid. We come because we're passionate. So there's a district next to Delhi called Mewat, which is one of the poorest districts in India. And it's a completely minority-dominated district. And it has the highest illiteracy of women amongst all the 10 North Indian states. And somebody sitting in Mewat, a young person, heard about the Me Too movement. And they said, wow, why can't we do something here? So they got all the women above the age of 40 who were illiterate. And they said that, we, a group of young PhD students, will take 2 years off our program to just sit and teach adult women how to read and write. And today, it has been the most successful adult literacy program in India. 18,000 women in the last 2 years have learned how to read and write. Look at the Occupy Wall Street movement, right? Just people putting up tents outside Goldman Sachs, Broad Street, all over Financial District, New York. And what started out as a lark, as somewhat of a joke, became so big that who's the most popular politician in America today? It's Bernie Sanders, who's a one-issue politician, which is economic inequality, which I'm going to be spending most of my speech on today. Who's the most popular politician in England? Jeremy Corbyn, who's a one-issue politician, economic inequality. We are the 99%, which is that 1% of people in America own 54% of America. In the Rajas and Maharajas' time in India, the British Economic Gazette said 1% of people in India owned 24%. This is when the Maharajas were there. Today, 1% of people in India own 62% of India. 10% of people in India own 94% of India. That means 90% of people in India, which includes almost all of you, own 6% of India, which is really a shocking statistic. There was a teacher a few years ago in Rajasthan called Deep Chand Sharma, and he wrote a letter to the Prime Minister. And he said, I've retired and I've saved 5 lakh rupees and I want to give this to the 5 poorest people in India. And he got a letter back saying, we have no idea who the 5 poorest people in India are. And he said, fair enough. He sent the checks back and he said, could you kindly give this to 5 out of the 100,000 poorest people in India? And he got his checks back saying, we have no idea who the 100,000 poorest people in India are. Now the fact is, we're always touting that we've got 84 billionaires and 83 billionaires. And if somewhere in this, fog, the last man in society has gone completely missing, then that is something for us to think about very, very seriously. For the book that I finished, that's coming out in December, I was in Maharashtra and I was looking at the economics of water. And I went to Marathwada, I went to Latur and Beed and Osmanabad and all these areas. And while I was there, the chief minister did something quite good, which is he sent a train to Latur with 500,000 liters of water in it. It was looted 16 times. A train with water in it was looted in Pune and Ahmednagar and Beed speed, and every 30 kilometers it was looted. It took 4 days to reach. And I mean, I was just astounded by how a train in Maharashtra, which is supposed to be India's richest state, was looted for 10 liters and 20 liters of water. Anyway, I was going to give a lecture at TIS after that, so I went to Mumbai. And when I was driving there, I saw a big hoarding saying Aquaria Grand, a building with 200 apartments and 200 full-size swimming pools to replicate life in an aquarium. Why anybody would want to live in an aquarium, I have no idea. But still, they said, and I said, what a crass, vulgar display of vision. I mean, in the same state, people are looting trains at that very moment. And some builder, is building a building with 200 swimming pools. And then I started looking at water more carefully. Maharashtra has 36 districts. 3 districts, Mumbai, Thane, and Pune, consume 59% of the water. Just 3 districts. And when I asked the water minister that why is this so, he said it's very simple. We monetize water as an asset. Those who can pay more for it will get more. Now, I'm not really a capitalist, but that seems to me to be a very crazy thing in a country like ours, which is essentially and has always been a poor country. The question we have to ask ourselves is, and I'm going to get back to inequality, is does inequality breed injustice, right? Are they symbiotic in nature? And the answer is yes. A family came to see me in Delhi, a Sikh family, and they said, we've come from Ludhiana and we live now in Tilak Nagar, which anybody who knows Delhi is really a refugee colony, resettlement colony after the Sikh riots. And I said, why do you live in Delhi? Why did you leave Punjab? And they said, because our brother was one day taken away by a policeman, and we suspected that that policeman murdered him. And in a small town, you can't pick a fight with the local police. It's just not something that a common man can do. So they, after a while ran away. Interestingly, the CBI also thought that police officer murdered the brother. This is Ashish Kumar and his brother Vinod. And they put murder charges on the gentleman in question, on the cop. So I said to them that, look, you've run away, but look at it in terms of, karmic balance. You've also ruined that cop's career. Because obviously he would have been finished after that, right, with murder charges. They said, no, sir, he's the sitting Director General of Police in Punjab, Sumed Singh Saini. A man with multiple murder charges on him was Director General of Police in Punjab. I was in Odisha to do research for my book Quietly on Navrangpur and, those areas. And 2 examples that I read, which obviously I can't read Odia, but somebody told me. One is Dana Majhi and the other is Gati Dhibar. Both of them, you know this, you're nodding your head, both of them who carried their son and their daughter, their dead body, for 10 to 20 kilometers. 10 to 20, sorry? Sorry, the wife and the son, carried them just because the hearse, the ambulance, would refuse to take them because they said, 100 rupees de dijiye. And the man didn't have 100 rupees. He said, look, I'm really sorry, but I don't have it. Could you switch off your phones, please? It's really impolite. Unless, of course, it's the Prime Minister who's calling you, in which case you have my permission. When I won this election, the second one, I was campaigning in the middle of the election. I was going from Lucknow to Kanpur. And in the middle is a district called Unnao. And I saw these big hoardings saying, Gaurav Shukla ko jitao, Gaurav Shukla ko bachao. I thought it was kind of a weird slogan. You know, हम तो दूसरों को बचाने के लिए चुनाव जीतते हैं. But anyway, so I said, who's this gentleman? So they said, oh, you know, he's a young man and he's behind bars. I said, okay. So I said, why is he behind bars? So they said, oh, because he's accused of raping a 12-year-old girl. I said, that's interesting that a national party would give a guy like this a ticket. And not only did 4 of his friends supposedly at that time rape the girl, but they were kind enough to pour acid all over her face so that she would be too fearful to ever talk about it. And when I got elected, I came to Parliament and I called the Chief Minister at the time and I called the Director General of Police. And I said, for God's sake, why has this man's trial not started? He had been in jail for 4 years, but the trial hadn't started. And they said, oh, because we're still debating whether he was a child when he did this or whether he was an adult. I was, listen, if he's old enough to rape a girl and pour acid on her face, I think he better be tried as an adult. You know, if you're old enough to rape, you're old enough to face charges, for God's sake. And anyway, I took this issue up in a big way, and I'm happy to say he's now convicted and he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail. You know, I speak to a lot of young people, and one of the things that I've been looking at, I saw this latest NASSCOM report, which says that tech jobs are slowing down every year for the last 5 years. And I thought that's strange because that's the one thing that Indians look forward to, that, you know, the IT sector is booming and everything. So why is that? So when I was in Bangalore, I went to Infosys and, Cognizant, and I asked them, so why is this happening? And they said, because, and they showed me an internal report that they had done of 36,000 engineering students. And they said only 4% met the minimum level of coding during that entire period. And I said, well, what do you mean? And they said, see, all the colleges teach you entry-level stuff. They don't teach you artificial intelligence, they don't teach you machine learning, they don't teach you data science, they don't teach you cybersecurity. So we're not preparing for the future, right? We're preparing for the past. That is not a good preparation. You know, and I don't understand these colleges who take 20 lakhs and 30 lakhs and then give you a degree which frankly is worth junk. You know, because what do you do with it if you can't get a job? I want to focus on the next part, which is, does privilege perpetuate privilege? And as somebody who's, ticks every single box for privilege, I think I'm the right person to give this speech with a lot of guilt in my heart. I was looking at a report in the New York Times about Harvard. And it said something very interesting. It said 60% of all the students at Harvard have a family median income of $240,000 a year. 60%. That's the top 1% of American income. And only 3% of students at Harvard are in the bottom 25% of the American economic strata. Only 3% are in the bottom 25%, not the bottom 5%. So I thought this was kind of weird. And also a statistic which is that 54% of all students that graduate Harvard, 84% of all students that graduate Harvard immediately enter the top 1% of earning within 5 years of leaving university. So it's privilege perpetuating privilege. What is the most sought after job for a common person in India? Tell me. What's the most sought after job? An IAS job, right? That's the most sought after job. So I did a RTI, and it's not easy getting responses to the RTI. But Satyanand Mishra ji, who's a good Odia, was the teacher of my friend, and so he gave it to me. So I want to tell you, 84%, because what is our conventional wisdom? Our conventional wisdom is that IAS officers are the salt of the earth, गांव से आते हैं, बेचारे मजदूरी करके आगे बढ़ते हैं, देश को समझते हैं, देश को जानते हैं. What's the truth? 84% of all IAS officers in this country grew up in the top 20 cities of India. 84%. This is an RTI application. 66% of all IAS officers in India, 66% attended private school. 29% of them attended convent school. What are we talking about, right? 72% of all serving IAS officers have postgraduate degrees. Now, all of you know that getting a postgraduate degree, A, requires a lot of money, and it requires a lot of time. Not everybody can do it. Because if you tell your parents, I want to do a PhD, they're going to say, wait a minute, I can't afford to have you studying for the next 10 years. Get to work. And so, what is this link of inequity? It has to be understood. Let's look at education, right? So there are 15.5 lakh schools in India, okay? Only 18,000 of these schools are from what in India we call the posh boards. ISC, CBSE, IB, A-levels, etc. Right? 98.8%, sorry, my maths isn't my strong suit, are state boards, etc. But it costs a lot to study in a school with CBSE, with IB, with ISC. So the average cost of these schools per year, and I'm taking a very middle-level figure, is 70,000 rupees a year. If you look at government socio-economic caste census data, most Indians don't make 70,000 bucks a year. And if they do, they need to eat as well, right? So they're not going to put all of it at their children's school fees. So the Supreme Court in 2012 did something interesting and progressive. They said 25% of all seats will be blocked for economically weaker sections, right? I looked at the NCPCR report, National Protection for Child Rights report, because I know the Minister for Women and Child Affairs. So I asked the lady in question, I said, could you give me this report? No, actually I didn't. I looked it up on the net. And it turns out that of all the seats that have been reserved for economically weaker sections, only 21% are filled. 79% are totally empty. And why is this, right? Why is this? I want to get back to this a little later. So, let's look at who's getting into the best institutes in India. Let's take IIT, right? IIT is a great paragon of excellence and everybody aspires to go to IIT. So who's getting into IIT? So we've just figured out that only 1.2% of Indian schools are IB, CBSE, ISC, etc., right? But what percentage of IIT is filled by those people? 78%, right? So if you come from that 1% of India, you occupy 78% of IIT and 88% of IIM. So that means if you're not in that privileged 1%, you have no equal share in the future of our country. And this is something we need to look at very seriously, right? Look at, everybody talks about NPAs, right? Everybody says NPA, NPA. What about education NPAs? Do you know that there are 6,100 crores of education NPAs in our country? So what is an education NPA? A man committed suicide 6 months ago in Kerala, in Kollam district, because he took a lot of loan and he made his daughter a nurse. The daughter did well, she got a job as a nurse, but the job was 6,000 rupees a month. He took 4 lakhs to make her a nurse. After 3 years, you know what in Hindi, vulgarly we call kurki. I don't know if you know what that is, which is that you're so broke that you just tell the bank, come and tala lagao everything of mine. And it is the most psychologically shattering thing for a person in a village, Because you know how competitive village politics is. And if you have bankers come to your house and just take away everything and your patilas and your pots and pans and everything, I mean, it shatters you, right? It shames you. Arya Prakash, who killed himself, all of us know Rohit Vemula, but I found Arya Prakash's case even more graphic because he got into IIT Madras. And I want to read out, what he said the night before he killed himself. He wrote a letter and he said that I don't have an upper caste background. I don't have an upper class background. I had no top-notch schooling. I don't know how to speak good English. I don't wear branded clothes. And this is a gulf that can never be bridged. And when he killed himself, right, in IIT Madras, after that, 2 weeks later, the results came. And you know what? He topped the whole batch. But he was not alive to see it. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, education, instead of working as an equalizing measure, is it institutionalizing, a gulf that can never be bridged? I want to talk about innovation, right? Because a big trend in our country is innovation, etc. What does it mean? Amazon India comes to India, okay? On day one, Amazon India controls 64% of the Indian market. On day one. So I went to America over the summer and I met Jeff Bezos. And I said to him, sir, how did you come into an alien country, a difficult country, and be number one on day one? They blew Flipkart away so badly that Flipkart finally sold themselves, right, to Walmart. And had they hadn't, Flipkart would have been worth junk today, frankly. I hope there are no Flipkart people here. I didn't mean it, in case there are. So, what did Amazon do? It's very interesting. Amazon hired 8,000 people 4 years before they came to India. 4 years before they came. And what did those 8,000 people do? All those 8,000 people did was market research. There were two places in Odisha, a place called Cuttack and a place called Jajpur, which is not a very big place, right? And all over the country they had people and they were just telling them कि भाई हिंदुस्तान है क्या चीज़, यहाँ पे बाजार है क्या, यहाँ लोगों की नीयत क्या है, लोगों की सोच क्या है. So what did they learn? And Jeff Bezos told me. He said, we learned 4 things. 1, people have a lot of smartphones, but they're cheap smartphones. So they don't have much memory. So if you put a heavy app on it, the phone will crash and nobody will ever put your app ever again. 2, the trading community in India is extremely strong and it's extremely united and vocal. So if we're seen to make enemies with them, they will go on the streets and the government will kick us out sooner or later. 3, if we're seen as an imperialist force, कि भाई एक और East India company आ गई and they're going to come and take away Indian jobs and enslave India and enslave all the shopkeepers, then people will protest. So we need to find a way around this. Basically these 3 things, right? So what did they do? 1, they made the lightest Amazon app anywhere in the world. 2, it is the only country in the world, the only country, including Peru, including, Papua New Guinea, where Amazon gives a handling fee to every shopkeeper. So you can actually go to a shop and say, I want to buy Pampers for my kid. And that shopkeeper will say, sure, I'll buy it for you and I'll get it for you. And that man gets a 2% handling fee, which is hell of a lot. So they're incentivized because they're actually partners of Amazon right now. And the third thing that they did was they launched something called Amazon Tatkal, which is if you're a seller, right? If you're selling guavas or if you're selling leather or whatever, you can actually get onto Amazon and sell within 30 minutes. You just have to give proof of validation. That's it. So this is innovation, right? This is how you take over ecosystems. What is innovation? It's just bringing a new idea to keep yourself viable, right? So how do we add to the body of knowledge, and why is India not doing that? I went to NASA, right, in Houston, and I went to their cafeteria. I did not see one white guy. I only saw Indians. I thought I was in Hyderabad or Guntur or something, because I only heard Telugu being spoken. And I said to them, is this NASA? And they said, yeah, we're all from India. And so I asked the head of NASA, I said, could you give me an actual statistic about how many people work here in your headquarters and how many are Indian? And you know what the statistic is? 3,700 full-time employees, 2,100 Indians. That is crazy. That's a real statistic. Of course, a lot of them are American-born, but they're still Indians, right? So why is India lagging behind, right? So why aren't we a bigger economic force So this is why. One is that we don't invest in R&D, in research and development, right? So as a per capita, as a percentage of GDP, we're 0.6, up from 0.4. South Korea is 8%. Finland is 6%. Israel is 9%. 9% they're investing in R&D. This is why countries continue to dominate. What about how many researchers we have per million people? So we have 300 researchers per million people. Germany has 10,000 researchers per million people. So why in India do startups fail? So we have the biggest amount of startups in our country, and we have the biggest rate of failure, which is 91%. So The Economist did a very interesting story on this, which is they interviewed the head of 100 companies, and out of those, 20 were Indians. And everybody else, I read those tables, everybody else said, we want our money back in 10 years, 15 years, 8 years. Every Indian hedge fund manager said, we want our money back between 2 and 3 years. That's not possible, right? Why do you think in India, we have a bunch of rip-offs, right? We have Ghana for Spotify, we have Ola for Uber, we have, all these things. We have Oyo rooms for Airbnb. We don't have a single meta-level startup. Where is our Tencent? Where is our Baidu? Where is our Alibaba? It's not there. And why isn't it there? It's because there's a failure in investing in education. In right to education, we have spent 3.7 lakh crores. Do you know what we have spent that money on? 89% of all money that has been spent on right to education has been spent on building buildings. 89% of every 1 rupee that is spent on right to education, which is the biggest government flagship program since independence, is spent on building buildings. Now let's be honest, we all know why politicians love to build stuff. So what do? You go to a village, right? And you build a building. So what happens at that building? I'll tell you what happens. Marriages happen, funerals happen, election rallies happen. Everything happens except education. I'm not kidding, right? All the puja pandals happen. And why is that? Right? We have a shortfall of teachers. Everybody knows the statistics. I don't want to get into that, right? But why don't we think out of the box? This is not an education speech, so I want to move on quickly. But I just have one suggestion, right? Forget about the other things. If we just ask graduates and postgraduates to take a gap year, nowadays lots of Indians are taking a gap year, right? And postgraduates can teach for 1 year in a district of their choosing, class 8 to 12, and graduates can teach class 0 till 8. We will have 4 times as many teachers as we need. We've got to start thinking in a solution-oriented manner. What is the biggest reason for our economic failure? Nobody talks about this. Patents. Do all of you know what patents are? Right? Have any of you seen Shark Tank? Has anybody seen Shark Tank over here? Okay. So the first question that anybody will ask you in America, if you say, I've done this, they say, have you patented this, right? Have you got a patent? Have you got a utility patent? Have you got a design patent? In America, it costs you takes 6 months to get a patent. Do you know what the average time it takes to get you a patent in India? Do all of you know what a patent is? It's like if I make this, right, so that people don't knock it off, I patent it. Do you know how long it takes in India to get a patent? 6.5 years. It is the slowest patent regime in the entire world, including Lesotho and Madagascar and everybody. In technology, if you wait 6.5 years to get a patent, don't you think that technology will be obsolete? It'll be obsolete in 10 months. What are you talking about? Right? So, in India, last year, of every patent that was granted, do you know how many of those were granted to Indians? In India. Just guess. 9%. In India, the patents were granted to 9% Indians. That means 91% of people who got patents, provisional and otherwise in India, were foreigners. So they said, this is ours. So we said, great. And then they said, this is ours. And we said, great. It's bizarre. I want to talk about environmental injustice, right? Because the two big issues for young people across the world are economic inequality and environmental injustice. These are the only two issues that really matter. That and buying mythology books. That's the third issue that matters. But not Amish, I don't like him. I'm just teasing. So, I live in Delhi. Two of the biggest satellite cities of Delhi are Gurgaon and Faridabad. Gurgaon and Faridabad have a waste treatment plant called Bandwari Waste Treatment Plant. Okay? Two people from Lucknow came to see me, and they said, I hope most of you understand Hindi. And they said that, भाई साहब हम लखनऊ से हैं और हम दोनों भाई हैं और 30 साल के हम दोनों को कैंसर है. मैंने कहा दोनों को कैंसर, आप 30 साल के ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है? दे सर अब है. आई सर आप क्या काम करते हो? दे सर हम बंदवारी गांव में काम करते हैं. There are two villages that are on the side of Bandwari waste treatment plant, Dera and Bandwari. Both villages have an incidence of 95% cancer. Even 2-year-old children have cancer. You must do a story on this, sir. 2-year-old children have cancer. If you're born, you have cancer. Why? Because for 7 years, the Bandwari waste treatment plant has not worked. This is the biggest waste treatment plant of Delhi that covers Faridabad and Gurgaon. Faridabad and Gurgaon are not small cities anymore. These are like big, huge metropolises. Why? Go figure. I went to give a lecture at Nalsar, which is a law college in Hyderabad. And my friend Faizan Mustafa was the head, and he said to me, I want to take you for lunch to the Falaknuma. I said, no, I don't want to go to the Falaknuma. I want to see the Musi River. He said, what? I said, I want to see the Musi River. He said, it's not like the Thames or anything. It's like an Indian river. I said, no, I want to see it. The Musi River is the world's largest cancer circle. Hyderabad produces 25% of generic drugs produced worldwide. Just Hyderabad, right? So it produces 75% of all Indian generic drugs. You know what generic drugs are, right? Drugs for poor people, basically, cheap drugs. There are 160 factories on this river. The Supreme Court has ruled 4 times saying that don't put your effluent directly, treat it and put it. But I guess that doesn't tie up with corporate profit. It goes in. The color of the Musi River is red. It is not the color of water. There are 100,000 people that live on this river, that live on it. Next door, they have 70,000 of them have cancer. 70,000. How did I hear about the Musi River? Because I went to Germany and I was at the University of Heidelberg, and one guy came up to me and he said, hey, I'm a German guy and I did this study in India. So I was like, okay, so it's probably some posh dude who came to India, has done some study. But when I read the study, you know what it was? That all fish in the Musi River now have both male and female genitalia. All fish. Because when you mess with nature, nature messes back with you. And, you know, yeah, I'll take a few questions after I'm done, though. Sure. And, you know, I've come here, and the first thing that people give you is flowers, right? And I always ask people, I was here last year giving a lecture at KIT, and the very cutely named Kit and Kiss. And they gave me all these flowers, and I said, don't give me flowers. And they said, why? And I said, because flowers are dead things. You cannot start a relationship by giving somebody a dead thing. If you gave me a podha, right? If you gave me a sapling, that would be the start of a relationship. And I just hope that all of you here will do one thing that I'm saying. Not switch off your phones, because I know that's a very tough thing to ask somebody to do. But if on your birthday, you would just plant one fruit tree. You know, just plant one fruit tree on your birthday. I promise you, it will relieve the burden of this earth. Everywhere I go, I just plant trees. I plant fruit trees, not eucalyptus and ashoka, real trees. I just want to very quickly talk about hunger. You know, I went to this new constituency, and my earlier constituency was basically my mother's constituency, which she had given me. And so people were fairly decently off. But in Sultanpur, I would go to villages and I would say, do you want roads or electricity? And they would say, Bhai Sahab, hum bhooke hain. Hum bhooke hain, humko khana de do. And it didn't occur to me, you know, it hit me. Because one lives in Delhi and one is educated all over the place, and you never hear somebody coming to you and saying, hum bhooke hain. So I went to all the, and if the New Indian Express can do this in a pilot project, it'll be wonderful. I went to all the dhabas and the hotels and the marriage halls of Sultanpur, and I said, whatever khana is left at the end of the day, dal, roti, chawal, sabzi, gur, dahi, just give it to me. And we bought 5 second-hand Maruti vans or sumos or whatever, and we started picking it up. But our project failed. It failed because we had an industrial kitchen, but we were asking for too many things. So if somebody gives gobi and somebody gives dahi, you know, what do you make of it? So I thought we'll make khichdi or we'll make dalia, but we were not able to hack it. So then my colleague Nasib, Captain Sandhu is there, and it was his brainchild, and he said, sir, why don't we just make a roti bank? Forget it, just let's make a roti bank. I said, what the hell is a roti bank? He said, this time we won't just go to hotels and marriage halls. We'll ask every person across this town that give us whatever you can spare just in terms of rotis, right? And Sultanpur is not a big town. It's a very small place. Today we collect 25,000 rotis a day, right? And I've been a MP almost for 10 years now, and I'm probably the only MP that's never drawn a salary from Parliament. I've never taken a salary, ever. And every month, we just write to Parliament to donate it. But, so what we do is, we get these 25,000 rotis, and we give 2 sabzis every day of our own money, right? And so today, we're feeding 5,000 people a day. And we hope to scale it up. We hope to scale it up to 25,000 people a day so that we make this district the first district in UP that's completely hunger-free. All of you here, most of you are young, and all of you are thinking the same things. Why is this guy speaking for so long? No. All of you are thinking the same thing, which is, what can I do just as one person, right? You're thinking 2 things. One, what can I do? I'm just one person, what can I do? And the second thing is you're thinking, life has been very unfair to me, right? Everybody sitting here, just scratch their heart and everybody will tell you how cruel life has been, how somebody's had it good, how we've struggled so hard. I mean, I feel the same way. And I want to tell you the story of 2 people who I came across in India while I was writing this book. It's nothing better than a story, a real story. So I was looking at education, and I was very curious as to why Murshidabad in Bengal had gone from a 29% literate district to like 85%. So I said, how has this happened? So I asked a few people and they said, talk to Babar Ali. I don't know if any of you know who he is. So I didn't know. So I went to Murshidabad and I went to a very small village called Bhapta. And I saw this guy who now is older. And so Babar's story is amazing. When Babar was 9 years old, he was the only child of his village that went to school. But he felt very guilty about it. So every day he would come back from school, and every day underneath a guava tree, he would teach whoever kids he could what he learned in school that day. And slowly his fame grew. And people from nearby villages came. Somebody gave a chalk, somebody gave a broken tile to use as a blackboard, somebody gave some paper, and things started growing. And CNN heard about him. No Indian had heard about him, typical. And CNN heard about him, and they gave him one of the real Heroes of the Year award, Changemaker of the Year award, which at that time was $100,000 a year, which is a hell of a lot. And any other poor person or middle class person would have bought land or bought a tractor or bought a house because his father was a poor jute farmer. But Babar said, no, this money has come from education, it will go back into education. So he built a school which is like twice the size of this hall. And it fits about 3,000 people at one time. And he said that there are only 3 rules in this school. 1, everybody who learns will learn free. 2, everybody that teaches will teach free. And 3, everybody who learns will go to their individual village and they will teach their people what they've learned that day. And I thought it was amazing. And the second story is of Shrikant Bola. Pranam Dharmen ji, aapko pranam Netaji, aake baith jaiye. And the second story was that of Shrikant Bola. So, I don't know if you've heard this name. Ashwin ji, have you heard this name of Shrikant Bola? Oh yeah. So you know it well. Shrikant Bola was born completely blind. And when he was born, his parents wanted to kill him because he was blind, and they came from a very small village in Andhra Pradesh called Sitaramapuram. So he came in with every possible, disadvantage. But he was very keen on learning. And Shrikant Bola went through school and he wanted to do science in his +2. But the school said, we can't have you doing science in your +2 because how will you go through the syllabus? How will you do the experiments? And he went to court in Hyderabad. And court said that the child can study whatever he wants to study. And he studied science in his +2 and he topped Andhra Pradesh. He got 99%. After that, he applied to IIT and he got a rank of 13 All India, which is a very good rank. He's totally blind. And he got into IIT Delhi, but they refused to take him. So they said, how do we keep this boy? He's blind. How will he eat? How will he walk to class? We'll have to keep 2 people with him. We don't have that system. Then we'll have to make exceptions for other people. So we don't want him. So Shrikant said, fine, I don't want to create trouble. He took a gap year and he applied to MIT, which is the most prestigious institute of technology in the world, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And he was the first Indian to get 100% scholarship at MIT. Then he goes to MIT and he studies astrophysics, which, as you can realize, astrophysics is pretty tough. He got a gold medal in astrophysics, right? After getting a gold medal in astrophysics in MIT, Google, NASA, Oracle, HP, the US government, everybody said, come and work with us. Whatever you want, we'll pay you. He said no. The plan was always to come back to India. He came back to India and he started a company called Bolland Industries. Today, it is a 500 crore company. It employs 5,000 people. 3,000 of those people are blind. So every time you think that life has been cruel to you, think about what Babar Ali did in Murshidabad and think about what Shrikant Bola did with his life. And you will realize that you're very empowered and you can do a lot as a change maker. The last things I wanted to talk about was political reform, but I want to cut this short. I know all of you are concerned about one thing, which is 1, how can we do good? And 2, how can we make a lot of money doing it? So I just want to give you 2 or 3 examples and then cut my speech off. My friend Durgesh Nandan comes from a district in Uttar Pradesh called Ghazipur. And he shifted to Lucknow and he saw that all the rickshaw pullers and the 3-wheelers, drivers didn't own those vehicles. They worked for some big Sethji who owned them. So he started something called automotion ads. And automotion ads is very simply any company can advertise on the side of that small vehicle. And 50% of the money goes to the owner and 50% to the driver. And I think this guy takes about 5%. Because of this guy, today 300 people in Kanpur, in Agra, in Allahabad, in Banaras, today are driving their own vehicles. I was in Mumbai and I met Navneet Ranjan, who had come back from Harvard. And he was working in Dharavi. And he only worked with girls and he was only teaching them how to code and to make apps. And 2 girls, Feroze Aslam Ansari and Ansuja Madhiwal, have made 2 apps. One is called Pani Hai Jeevan, which is it tells you when the water will come, it tells you how long it will come, and it forms an internet queue. So there's no fighting, because otherwise in bastis and all, there's a lot of fighting over water. And Feroze Aslam Ansari was 14 when she made this app. It has sold in Google and Apple Play Store more than 3 million times. And the second is Ansuja Madhiwal, who's made Women Fight Back, which is a very famous app, which basically just says that it'll have location mapping and it gives an emergency message to 100 of your nearest stations. So any time if you're Eve teased, you just press a button and your location is mapped, it goes to 100 stations and 100 emergency contacts, you're saved. I want to just end by saying one thing, that most of you here are young people, right? This is the most wonderful time that it's ever been to be young in India. You are empowered, people are interested in you, and the opportunities nationally and internationally are endless. But you must be brave and you must follow your vision to its logical conclusion. And you must remember just one thing, which is your life has to have meaning. So it's not about being successful or being rich. Those are wonderful things if they happen. But if your life has meaning, like the lives of those people I've tried to talk about today, then it would have been a life worth living. Thank you so much for listening to me. Have a nice day.